As both a scholar and an individual in search of spiritual enlightenment, I will define my interpretation of spirituality and explain its connection to human emotion. Spirituality is the quality or state of being aware of the human spirit and its interaction with energy, as opposed to material or physical things. Spirituality is discovered through humans' pursuit of meaning and purpose in life. Exposure to spirituality is dependent upon each individual's interpretation of their own experience, which is ultimately a critical influence in constructing one's personality. Spiritual energy appears to be ever present, in motion, and constantly flowing in a wave-like state. Furthermore, spiritual energy is a penetrative universal life force that can be harnessed to stimulate an enhanced mental state by triggering emotions. Author and psychologist Sharon G. Miharis describes this process in her work, The Revelation of Breath. Miharis' work focuses on the Buddhist tradition of utilizing breath through breathing exercises. Control over one's oxygen intake can be used as a means to stimulate or experience feelings of peacefulness and remove negative emotions such as hatred. In addition to breathing patterns, there are several other examples that determine emotions are triggered by spiritual experiences. By examining the manner in which humans experience activities, relationships, and music, it is evident that emotion is an emergent property which is spiritual. When engaging in physical activities such as sports, breathing enables one the ability to harness spiritual energy. Miharis describes the experience of Tibetan monks who competitively engage in breathing exercises during meditation. These monks explain that breathing invokes a mystical and almost magical quality. Similarly, playing sports activates one's spiritual awareness by forcing the individual to embrace the feelings of tension between experiencing triumph and failure. In this regard, spirituality functions as a survival instinct that works in unison with adrenaline to drive an individual to reach the peak of their potential. In doing so, one strikes a balance between fear, joy, anger, and anticipation. This mental state is commonly referred to as being in the zone, which is a spiritual state. Personally, I have over 15 years of experience in participating in athletic competitions. Most recently, I have competed in lacrosse at the high school and college level. There is no doubt that during my biggest moments, such as scoring goals, I've experienced a transcendental emotional state of consciousness while consuming the maximum amount of breath. During these moments, I experienced an emotional high. I was fearless, fiercely confident, and engaged. In addition, during my most intense moments, I was able to anticipate and process at a faster frame rate than normal. Upon leaving this state, I felt out of breath and filled with a chilling yet legitimately awesome sensation. Before this state of exhaustion, I entered an intense emotional and spiritual state by utilizing my breath to harness spiritual energy and focusing it to activate the maximum of my physical abilities. This passionate state of determination combines several emotions that reflect rage, gladness, acceptance, and determination, but most importantly, these emotions are activated by spiritual energy through making them spiritual in nature, maximized by spiritual energy, making them spiritual in nature. Skeptics of spirituality would argue I was merely demonstrating my athletic ability, which is a product of mechanical functions and experience. Certainly, body functions make decisions through executive function and manifest athletic traits through proprioception of the brain, which occurs in the cerebrum. However, this point is mute when considering that athletes spend hours participating and preparing in an attempt to stimulate the pressure of an in-game experience. Athletes would argue that the experience of practice isn't able to recreate the intense state of being in a live game. Part of this is because the body has an inability to replicate the mental state of performing within a live game atmosphere. Live games draw on emotions from fear or failure, or the passion of triumph. There is little consequence for failing practice, as well as little glory for succeeding. Thus, the difficulty for experiencing the intense emotions of an in-game situation are highlighted by the circumstances which requires one to embrace their emotional state and harness spiritual energy. This illustrates that harnessing spirituality is not produced through organic function, and the intensity of big game moments neither is the intensity of big game moments. Moreover, further evidence that emotions are rooted in spiritual energy is obtainable by observing human relationships. The emotional investment of relationships epitomizes emotion's spiritual essence. Humans experience pain and sadness when their loved ones are upset with them. Scholar Tai Chi identifies this point by writing, "The critical or hurtful things that a loved one says about us in arguments may not represent their real feelings. Granted, as adults mature, we realize that even though our loved ones may be upset, they still love us dearly. Regardless, seeing them upset triggers pain and an emotional state of distress. There is no physical force that is used to trigger the state of being upset, yet nevertheless, pain is inflicted. Evidently, neuroreceptors and sensory receptors are triggered through a connection to our loved one's feelings. The state of empathy and endearment is a prime example of spirituality connecting to emotions. Similarly, sound from music stimulates functions that further emphasize the connection between emotions and spirituality. Next, when analyzing musical lyrics, it becomes clear that listening to music creates an emotional experience triggered by spirituality. When listening to music, the sounds and the rhythms of flows of one body overtake one's senses and stimulate emotions. Personally, I feel the lyrics are the most important part of a song because they set the mood and can trigger emotions without any accompanying sound. One of the best examples of music that touches me both emotionally and spiritually is from the hip-hop artist known as Future. Much like a painter does when he's expressing himself, Future expresses himself through lyrics. For example, the lyrics, "You can feel the pain when I'm rapping because I'm raging." Without any accompanying sound, you can sense Future's sadness and anger, and it stimulates an emotional reaction. Listening to Future is a deeper experience than just hearing sound penetrate through your ear and translating the words through cognitive vision. His word choices and the crackle of the voice trigger the sensory receptors as you can feel the tension increase through your body. Ultimately, listening to music transfers spiritual energy, which stimulates emotional and physical reactions. Furthermore, Future's lyrics and concepts of illustrate concepts of spirituality. In Future's songs, he often reflects on the emotional journey of self-transformation, which is inherently a spiritual concept. Future is a primary example of someone who pushed himself to transform his life from something unfortunate into something beautiful and successful. In doing so, he became a stronger person. He reflects on this in his lyrics. "I done been considered a failure, it don't faze me. And I've been traumatized before, but still I'm not afraid." These lyrics stimulate a feeling of hope and anticipation that bad things you experience do not have to permanently define you. In fact, they can be used as a method to motivate self-improvement through focus and perseverance. Scholar James Fowler describes spirituality as being a lifelong process with many stages that pass through and develop with both that individuals pass through with spiritual development and maturity. Future's lyrics illustrate the importance of the spiritual journey, inspiring hope and triggering a euphoric state of joy. For example, came from the bottom of the mountain, shit was ugly, made it to the top of the mountain. As someone who's ashamed of where I've gone and desperate to see how far my ambition will take me, Future's music and spiritual journey serves as a guide that I can look to as I pursue my own career in writing and entertainment. Finally, although the world is shared amongst all humans, each individual experience is unique and subjective. As a result, different perceptions of reality are constructed through different interpretations of each individual experience. Yet, there are certain aspects of life that can be shared through select and innate ability to emotionally relate to one another. Skeptics insist that this is merely a romanticized interpretation of body's natural and mechanical functions. Yet I would argue that spirituality is more accurate and provides a more accurate interpretation because it applies knowledge from different cultures, personal experience, and external elements that are often difficult to study under a scientific scope. Scientific depictions of body functions are incomplete and constantly in development. However, they will remain incomplete as long as they lack the core concepts of spirituality. I would define myself as a highly spiritual person, yet there are others who would disagree or argue with this statement because spirituality is a subjective and relative concept. In conclusion, after close examination, through emotions I have interacted with spiritual energy, which is legitimate and as reactive as any form of energy, such as electricity, or simply as genuine as my own emotional experiences. Control and mastery of one's breathing mechanics may be the most effective way to harness this energy and experience spirituality. Yet, the manner in which humans experience activities, relationship, and music illustrate emotion as an emergent property which is spiritual.